I hope everyone is back from the break. And Anthony's going to go ahead and present performance measurements and progress reports. Go ahead and take it away, Anthony. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Good morning, folks. I'm Anthony Swingruber, Senior Program Administrator here at the Commission. This is part 2 of today's program development training on the topic of performance measurement and progress reporting. So the first part, I'm going to focus more on the fundamentals of what performance measurement is, and then I'll try to connect it to the more practical considerations of how it ties into your progress reporting requirements. By the end of this section, you'll be able to describe what performance measurement is and how it can be useful in program evaluation, describe how AmeriCorps approaches performance measurement, describe how AmeriCorps national performance measures are used to tell the national service story, and describe your performance measurement reporting responsibilities. And we'll have some knowledge checks on these topics along the way. Okay, so what is performance measurement? And many of you all who have been running AmeriCorps programs or other programs in the past have already engaged in this. And as you see here, the definition is the ongoing systematic process of tracking your program's ongoing outputs and outcomes. Now let's define these two key components, outputs and outcomes. So outputs measure the completion of activities and document the fact that individuals received services, products were created, or programs were developed. Outputs answer the question, how much service did we perform, or what products did we develop? Outputs do not answer the question, what changed as the result of the service provided or product developed? Outcomes. These reflect changes or benefits that occur as the result of the service. It can reflect changes in individuals, organizations, communities, or the environment, address challenges or changes in attitudes, beliefs, knowledge and skills, behavior, or conditions. For example, changes within an organization may include an enhanced system to better serve community members. Outcomes answer the question, what difference did our service make for beneficiaries, or how did the new system or product enhance the capacity of the organization to serve the community? In general, the most compelling outcomes address changes in behavior or conditions. However, what makes a change compelling is not just the type of change, but the magnitude or amount of change. And of course, the change should reflect the activity's intended purpose. In summary, performance measurement can show whether a change occurred. To find out whether the change occurred because of the intervention, you would use other approaches such as evaluation methodologies. And that's a key distinction to keep in mind. Performance measurement is measuring outputs and outcomes, whereas program evaluation is going to answer the question of whether a change occurred because of the intervention. Let's talk a little bit about the types of outcomes we might see, including changes in attitude or belief, knowledge or skill, behavior, or condition. Outcomes regarding attitude and belief involve a change in thought or feeling. For example, a primary caregiver feels she has more social support after receiving respite services. Outcomes measuring knowledge and skill involve a change in understanding or ability, or in other words, what a person learns. An example here would be a student improves reading ability after receiving tutoring services. Outcomes addressing behavior involve changes in actions such as conduct or habits, often within a specific context. An example here would be a student who improves their class participation after participating in a school mentoring program. Outcomes regarding condition involve a change in situation or circumstance. For example, a family is transitioned into safe, affordable housing after receiving referrals and counseling, or a community receives a new after-school program because a youth organization was able to build its capacity to provide services. Here we're going to explore examples of outcomes in particular AmeriCorps focus areas. So here we see an example in the focus area of education and an example of a change or attitude. An example of a change in attitude or belief within this focus area of education would be an increased interest in school. An example of a change in knowledge or skill is an improved math ability. A change in behavior is increased school attendance, and a change in condition is the successful completion of high school. In the focus area of health, an example of a change in attitude would be the increased desire to adopt good nutrition habits. A change in knowledge or skills is the ability to prepare healthy meals on a small budget. A change in behavior is increased healthy food intake, and a change in condition is improved household food security. In the area of capacity building, when your aim is to build capacity, the most relevant type of outcome is likely to be a change in condition. A good example of this would be an AmeriCorps member implementing a new training curriculum for community volunteers that are interested in helping out in the event of disaster. Another example, AmeriCorps members organize regular fundraising events for an organization's after-school program, and these events increase community awareness about the program and result in a measurable outcome, such as an increase in dollars, donations, and numbers of volunteers. An increase in resources allows the organization to expand its after-school services to 2 new locations, so this is clearly a change in condition. You should choose meaningful but also realistic and measurable outcomes for your program. Coming up in the presentation, we'll look at some of the national performance measures that AmeriCorps programs can use. Okay, we'll do a quick knowledge check here. You can just go ahead and put that in the chat. Outputs are the amount of service provided. What might that include? Select all that apply. So let's just do 15 seconds here to keep things moving. And I'll keep an eye on the chat here. Yeah, let's see what ideas we have for outputs are the amount of service provided. What might that include? Select all that apply. Go ahead and put your answers in the chat. Could be A, B, C, or D. All right, any brave souls that wanna, okay, I'm seeing all of the above. A, C, and D. Okay, a little variation there. The A, C, and D is the correct answer. Thank you all for putting yourself out there. The number of grant dollars spent would not connect to the service provided. So that's why B would not be included in the outputs for this particular example here. Outcomes are changes that occur. This may include which of the following. Select all that apply. Any brave souls want to try to take this one on? And I'm keeping an eye on the chat. Outcomes are changes that occur. This may include which of the following. Select all that apply. Increase in knowledge and skills, better conditions or circumstances, number of individuals assisted, a new or different attitude or belief. Okay, similarly with the first question, 3 of these apply. And the one that would not be considered an outcome is number of individuals assisted, because that does not connect to any type of change, right? That's just an indicator of who receives service. And that would be an example of an output when we're talking about number of individuals assisted. When we're considering a change that occurs as a result of service provided, that could be an increase in knowledge and skills, better conditions or circumstances, a new or different attitude or belief. The following statement is an example of what type of outcome. Youth who have never volunteered before serve at an organization of their choice for at least 30 hours over the summer. Would this be a change in attitude or belief, a change in knowledge or skill, a change in behavior, or a change in condition? Okay, I see Ulysses jumping right in with C, change in behavior. Anyone else? Since that is the right answer, yep, I see Erica with C as well. Yes, that is a change in behavior. You could also make a case that it's a change in attitude or belief, as they're the volunteers, the youth haven't volunteered before. Now they have an attitude towards civic engagement that they didn't before. But the most clear answer here is change in behavior, and that is an outcome. Remember, that's the key criteria when deciding whether a performance measure is an output or an outcome. Outcomes are always focused on changes. The following statement is an example of what type of outcome. A community health clinic expands its service hours from 40 to 48 hours per week due to increased volunteer support. Is that a change in attitude, belief, a change in knowledge or skill, a change in behavior, or a change in condition? Who'd like to take this one on? Apparently this one is a little tricky for folks. I see Andrea hesitantly putting D, then followed by other folks with the correct answer, which is D. In this case, we have a health clinic that was only operating at 40 hours, and now it can operate at 48 hours due to increased volunteer support. As I mentioned earlier, that is a capacity building outcome. Whenever a condition changes, we can think of that as the result of increased capacity within the AmeriCorps context. AmeriCorps members in this example are providing more volunteer support, so the organization, the community health clinic, can stay open longer. Now we'll get into why measure performance. So why do we measure performance? One reason is accountability. Performance measurement satisfies the need of funders and stakeholders. That includes AmeriCorps members, board members, community members, staff, and clients. So all of these stakeholders can see that your AmeriCorps program or project is actually getting results. Performance measurement also helps you communicate achievements in a way that funders and stakeholders will find meaningful and compelling. And another reason to measure performance is to determine if the change you thought would happen with your intervention is actually occurring. You could also use performance measurement data to spot and correct problems. Are you reaching the population you intended? Do some people require more or less intensive service to show a positive outcome? Even when an intervention is implemented exactly as planned, performance measurement can help you find ways to strengthen your intervention to make it more effective. So think of performance measurement as a way to get feedback so you know if your intervention is making the expected difference, and also help you to decide how to make the most of your limited resources. Now we'll talk about when you might use performance measurement. So performance measurement, think of it more than just something you have to check off, because it is a reporting requirement. Therefore, you need to collect data towards your performance measures. But you should also think about it as an integral part of the development of your program. As we sit here in program development training, it can help you consider the implementation, the effective implementation and assessment of your program. It can also help you with planning and management throughout the year. For example, before your program year begins, and that's where many of you all find yourselves now, performance measurement can help you clarify what specifically you hope to achieve at different time periods during the year. If you're planning to work with host sites, performance measurement can help you decide what you will need from those partners as you begin developing site applications. So if you also go through the process of host site development where you're recruiting and selecting sites, performance measurement can help you not only define your expectation for those sites, but it also gives you another way to assess which one of the sites will be best suited to implement the selected intervention of your program while also using resources wisely. Third, as you implement your AmeriCorps program, performance measurement can serve as a focal point for conversation with staff, AmeriCorps members, partner sites, and agencies. To ensure mutual understanding, you can reiterate why you are undertaking the effort, such as the need or problem your program is addressing, and what your intervention aims to achieve. In other words, the outcomes. Use performance measurement as you communicate with your program partners and sites to make sure they're collecting the right data and staying on schedule. Performance measurement should identify what data to collect, how data are to be collected, and that speaks to the methods and instruments of data collection, as well as the benchmarks for success. And those would be your targets when you're looking at your outputs and outcomes, the targets that you indicated within your application for funding. Regular feedback from sites also provides a reality check for your performance measurement tools and data collection processes so you can refine those in an ongoing manner. As you engage in site monitoring throughout the year, and this is particularly salient to those of you that are running multi-site programs, performance measurement will help you spot problems and address training and technical assistance needs so your sites can be successful in collecting the right data. You can also use performance measurement data for continuous program improvement. For example, reviewing the data to see how different beneficiaries respond to your intervention. You can also compare data before and after you implement modifications to your intervention to see what works best. And the adjustments can help your program be more efficient and can contribute to a greater impact, such as higher success rates for beneficiaries and outcomes that are more likely to be sustainable. Finally, performance measurement results feed into reports you do for the commission. So now we're getting into the practical aspect of this for reporting requirements. And I'm going to share more on AmeriCorps New York progress reports in a moment. But the results from your performance measurement can be used to promote your AmeriCorps program, maintain or strengthen buy-in from local stakeholders, and make the case for continued support, continued funding, or even new resources. Reaching and or surpassing performance measure targets is a good reason to celebrate and can build morale of your staff and AmeriCorps members when they see tangible results of your program. Okay, quick knowledge check here, just one this time. Performance measurement could be used for which of the following? Select all that apply. Sharing progress with stakeholders, making decisions about allocating resources, hiring the best grant writers to assist with resource development, making the case for funding. Who would like to tackle this question here? Performance measurement could be used for which of the following? Select all that apply. All right, Erica and Andrea, right on the nose, as is all the follow-up responses. That would be A, B, and D when we're talking about hiring the best grant writers. That doesn't necessarily connect to performance measurement. In this case, it's going to be sharing progress with stakeholders, making decisions about allocating resources, making the best case for funding. These are examples of what performance measurement can help you do. Okay, so now let's talk about national performance measures. We talked about performance measurement in general before, so this will focus specifically on how AmeriCorps approaches performance measurement and what it hopes to achieve. AmeriCorps grantees contribute to the national service story by selecting outputs and outcomes, which we defined earlier, for the national performance measures. And these can include both agency-wide priority measures as well as complementary program measures. Agency-wide priority measures, those are the ones that are listed in the AmeriCorps performance measures instruction. So that's an important document as it pertains to performance measure in the performance measurement in the AmeriCorps context. And there'll be a link in a slide coming up here. And maybe one of my colleagues can drop it in the chat as well. Data gets aggregated from AmeriCorps programs that come from the agency-wide priority measures. Complementary program measures are ones that are customized, and some of you all may only have agency performance measures that are within the performance measure instructions. Some of you may have a mix with customized performance measures, and AmeriCorps allows you that flexibility because sometimes there's interventions that are of particular import for specific AmeriCorps programs that aren't captured by the national performance measures. But these components together tell the national service narrative. So I mentioned that AmeriCorps has the national performance measures, and those are based on their programming priorities, also known as focus areas. And these were covered, I think, in the first week. These programming priorities or focus areas include disaster services, economic opportunity, education, environmental stewardship, healthy futures, veterans and military families, and capacity building. So within the national performance measures, there will be various performance measures within those focus areas. And the reason why AmeriCorps sets it up that way with standardized performance measures is to ensure that programs are using common terms and definitions and taking the same approach to measurement when it comes to those predefined national service performance measures. And that makes it then makes it possible for AmeriCorps to combine data from different programs and projects across the country with confidence. So although we're all speaking the same language and contributing data to the national service story, each AmeriCorps program has its specific performance measurement requirements. So keep that in mind. And that's a good segue to this question of, and this is just, I'm going to throw that out there and see who can answer it in the chat. Who knows where you would go to find your program's performance measures? And this, for some of you, it's going to be a no-brainer who've been working with AmeriCorps programs for several years. For others that are brand new, it's not uncommon for someone to get AmeriCorps assigned to them within their agency or organization, and if you're coming in midstream, you might not know exactly where to go to find out like what are the performance measures and targets that I'm supposed to be tracking for my program. So the question is, where would a new program coordinator go to find their program's performance measures? I see Dan Cressy saying e-grants. Ask Anthony, Ulysses says, which is absolutely valid. Back to Michael's reiteration of reaching out to your program administrator. If all else fails and you don't want to start digging through files, particularly in this example where you get AmeriCorps put on your plate and you're like, okay, where do I need to go for this, that, and the other thing? You can just ask your program administrator and they'll tell you where to go. In this case, it would be, you would go to your application for funding, and there's sometimes a disconnect there where you have a grant writer maybe within your organization or someone within your organization that's responsible for writing that application, which requires performance measures at the end of it. But that doesn't necessarily mean a program coordinator is going to have as much familiarity because they didn't write the application. But there'll be varying levels. Some of you are maybe intimately involved with the development of your performance measures and the data collection towards it. But you all, as program coordinators, will be involved in collecting data towards your performance measurements and then reporting on it. I just included an example of an old application. That's how it looks within the application for federal funding. So if you don't have that at your fingertips, I would recommend you either reach out to your performance administrator who can send you a copy of it, or someone within your agency that can forward it to you. Go to the end of your application. That's the performance measure section, and you'll see it laid out as such with the focus area that I mentioned. So in this case, we see economic opportunity being the focus area that's this example performance measure is focusing on. There's a field for objective, and all of these fields, if you were involved in writing your application in eGrants, and also I'd like to acknowledge Dan Cressy was right. This starts in eGrants, and that's where the application is submitted, and then you can download the application off of eGrants and review it to keep up with your performance measure requirements. But in any event, these are the fields that are input. You have to put a problem statement, selected interventions, describing the intervention. This should all be connected to your logic model as well. The logic model is a visual depiction of your intervention, and then the performance measures are what you're measuring your performance against. In this case, we have an output, number of individuals served. That's a very common national national service performance measurement output. You'll see that in this case, it's within economic opportunity focus area. You'll see number of individuals served within the health focus, within the education focus, because as I mentioned earlier, that's just counting the number of community members that actually receive services. It doesn't demonstrate that that a change has occurred. They could receive service and not actually meet an outcome. In this case, we see the example outcome of number of individuals with improved job readiness. That would be the change. Not every individual served are going to demonstrate a change. What you all have to think about, though, is how are you going to measure that change? Often it's through a survey, and you see that here when we see a description of the instrument. The recommended practice is to be clear on how you're going to carry out your survey in this case. Any type of pre-post instrument where you can confidently say the services that my program provided resulted in X number of individuals with job readiness. Show your work. How are you getting there? I've seen examples of programs putting headcount in. That is not generally a recommended practice, because even for outputs, because you could be counting people more than once and you shouldn't be doing that. And for outcome, definitely you cannot, a head count is not going to tell you anything about whether your intervention actually led to a change in that individual. So yeah, think through how your pre-post, just to use a common example of an instrument, a pre-post survey, how that will be carried out, both the who will do it, the time at which they have folks take the pre and post, what questions will be in there, and then you have to have some system for analyzing it to connect it to people that an individual that received service, and then what their potential outcome was or change at the end of the program intervention. Going back to national performance measures, these are some of the benefits of using national performance measures. So remember, you have to have at least in your application for federal funding, at least one aligned performance measure. When we say aligned performance measure, that means an output that's connected to an outcome. And that could be a national performance measure, or it could be a customized performance measure. The benefit of using a national performance measure is AmeriCorps can focus on the national priorities and the areas where national service has had success and has experience. And then it provides a strong agency-wide narrative to tell the national service story. AmeriCorps can collect high-quality data that through aggregation, where they're aggregating results of similar interventions, and that in turn allows for a stronger impact in national service narrative. And to ensure that the aggregated data is, that they're able to report those results in national reports, the guidance for national performance measures comes into play there, and that's going to be in that national in AmeriCorps performance measure instructions document. There'll be guidance in there that gives you the definition for the intervention, a target population, output and outcome, and information on collecting data and calculating the measure. So it sets it up for you in a way that you would have to think through a little further if you were customizing your own performance measure. So let's look at a few examples of national performance measures. In this example, AmeriCorps members provide training on nutrition designed for families on a low budget. This includes healthy meal preparation, stretching the grocery budget, and using local resources such as community gardens. They also provide counseling and referrals to other nutrition assistance programs. The output is the number of individuals who receive services, and that could include training on nutrition, referrals to alleviate long-term hunger. And the program tracks and reports on the number of individuals served. For you all, that is a key component, thinking about how you're tracking the number of people served. That could be through sign-in sheets. Sometimes you have to code these to make sure that people aren't counted twice. It may involve a digital system where these numbers can get input. There's AmeriCorps Learns and Encore, and I don't have that in this presentation, but maybe if one of my colleagues could just drop those names in the chat, those are very helpful for they're separate companies or contractors that have experience working with AmeriCorps programs, so they'll help you set up your web-based reporting systems that can be done through apps and such. So just a helpful tip there, where you can actually through your budget contract with these organizations that can help you set up your data collection systems and make sure that you're collecting consistent, verifiable, accurate data. So back to this example here, the outcome occurs when individuals served report increased food security for themselves or their family. Again, when we're talking about change after receiving services. And in this case, it represents a positive change in the family's circumstances. And you'll remember that from the beginning of the presentation. Outcome equals change in condition in this case. Here's another example. AmeriCorps members pilot new volunteer management practices to support mentors at a youth organization. That includes training mentors with the new curriculum, meeting with them one-on-one to address any issues that come up, and organizing periodic social events for mentors and youth to enhance camaraderie. The output in this example is the number of organizations that AmeriCorps members provide capacity building services to in their community. And the program tracks and reports on the number of organizations that received the training and participated in meeting and social events. The outcome in this example is the number of organizations that report an increase in their effectiveness, efficiency, and/or program scale or reach after receiving capacity building services. Again, these are national performance measures found in the performance measure instructions that lays out the definitions for you. I would recommend reviewing those performance measures if you're not familiar. Okay, two more knowledge checks here. Testing our understanding of outputs by looking at a project example. Project A serves economically disadvantaged young adults ages 18 to 25 to find a place to live while they seek employment. Which of the following national performance measure outputs would be the best choice for Project A? Go ahead and put that in the chat. And in about 15 seconds, I'll give the answer. So what do we think here? Is it the number of economically disadvantaged individuals receiving job training and other skill development services, number of economically disadvantaged individuals receiving financial literacy services, or the number of economically disadvantaged individuals, including homeless individuals, receiving housing services? Yes, everyone that put in an answer in the chat is correct. It is C, because the project's objective is to find the individuals it serves a place to live while they seek employment. So while job training might be a component of it as it's worded here, the better answer is those that have received housing services, and that is an output, not an outcome. Let's take a look at an example of an outcome to test your knowledge. Can you identify the best outcome? Project B provides homework help and tutors K through 6 students one-on-one in mathematics. Which of the following performance measure outcomes would be the best choice for the project? What do we think here? The project provides homework help and tutors K through 6 students one-on-one in mathematics. Which of the following performance measure outcomes would be the best choice for the project? What do we think about this one? I'm seeing a lot of C. Yes, in this case, literacy is thrown in there maybe as a curveball, but it says literacy or math or math. And the program is clearly focused on providing support to students in mathematics. So as an outcome, we would be looking at the change in their academic performance in said subject. Thanks for your participation, folks. We'll go ahead and summarize the key points of the presentation now, and then leave you with some considerations regarding AmeriCorps New York reporting. Outputs reflect the amount of service provided. This could be number of people served, products or programs created, while outcomes are changes that occur, keyword changes, that occur for individuals, communities, organizations, or the environment. This could be changes in attitude or beliefs, knowledge or skills, behavior or condition. Another takeaway as you begin your program year is that performance measurement is integral to the management of your respective programs. For example, in the areas of strategy and planning, site recruitment and selection, program or project implementation, and reporting to stakeholders. National performance measures reflect priorities and focus areas. These include disaster services, economic opportunity, education, environmental stewardship, healthy futures, veterans and military families, and capacity building. National performance measures will strengthen the national service story. AmeriCorps combines results from across the country, and to ensure that they are combining apples and apples. National performance measures are uniform, and grantees and sponsors will be required to collect data using the same approach. For more information on national performance measures, please review AmeriCorps State and National Performance Measure Instructions. That's a link to the latest fiscal year 2025 performance measure instructions. It's pretty consistent from year to year, but that's the latest version. Also, you can take a look at how performance measurement requirements are framed in program-specific notices of funding opportunities. And for instance, the one that's relevant to our programs is the fiscal year 2025 AmeriCorps State and National NOFO. So within that, you'll find instructions on performance measurement and how you need to speak to it in your applications for funding. A particular section, A3, performance goals or expected outcomes. So if you were to just do a keyword search for performance measures, there's not a whole lot of information in the NOFO, but it gives you the key requirement of what you have to have in your application. And you'll find performance measurement in section A3, and that's where it states that all applications must include at least one aligned performance measure, so an output that's matched to an outcome, and that performance measure has to correspond to your program's primary intervention, and that's how it connects to your logic model, which is a visual depiction of your intervention. And that performance measure may be a national performance measure that's found in the performance measure instructions, or it can be an applicant determined measure. There's also info in section E1B, community and logic model. And that's where it gives instructions on describing your logic model. So that's connected, your performance measures are based on your logic model. So you should see how AmeriCorps is instructing applicants for funding on how to go about describing their logic model. All right, now we will get into the final section of this presentation on AmeriCorps New York progress reports. We don't have the updated 2025 schedule, but we follow the same schedule every program year. We'll have that up soon on the website. This is looking at program year 2024. So how it goes is it's based on your program year start date. So some of you in normal years start on August 1st when we're not delayed by chaos. So if you were to start on 8/1/2024, and this, I think I put the expenditure reporting schedule. This is not what not for performance measurement reporting. There's a separate schedule, so disregard this schedule. My apologies. I can explain the performance measurement schedule pretty easily though. It's going to be your program year start until February 28th. That's the first checkpoint. So you're going to report on all data, program year start, whether you start on August 1st, September 1st, October 1st, or November 1st until February 28th. That's when the reporting period, the data, all data should only be within that period of time, and you have 30 days to submit. So that thinking ahead, the first progress report, we call it the mid-year progress report, is due March 30th. And it will be due in a web form. In years past, we had programs submit Excel files to facilitate reporting and data collection. We switched to SurveyMonkey, which generally made things go much smoother and makes it easier to aggregate data and download reports. We're looking at going to Microsoft Forms for this upcoming program year. So there's some functionality features that SurveyMonkey that we're limited with our SurveyMonkey subscription. But it'll be a web-based form, same content for those of you that are familiar with our progress reports. It'll be the same content, and I'll show you the components in the next slide of what to include, or what will the required fields that will be in your reporting form. Another important note, you'll receive a final approved version of your report after your commission program administrator reviews and receives clarifications. So once you submit it, you're not quite done unless you submitted it perfectly on the first pass. There might be some items that your PA identifies upon review that needs clarifications, and they'll reach out to you. And once you've satisfied those clarifications, then you'll receive a final version of your report for your records. And to finish the thought on the reporting schedule, so we have the mid-year report that's due in March. The end of your report is due at the end of October. So for those of you programs that are operating a program year 2024 program, that report is actually going to be due pretty soon. At the October 30th is the due date. The reporting period is program year start. So all data from when your program started until September 30th, and then it's always 30 days later. And in this reporting schedule that you see here for expenditure reporting, which Jim, our fiscal specialist, will cover tomorrow,
Anthony?
it's also 30 days after the end of the reporting period closes.
Excuse me, Anthony.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had the progress report schedule pulled up. Did you want me to go ahead and share it? Just so
just so we can see the visual representation of that, of what I attempted to verbalize. Thanks, Eric.
Yep.
Yeah, this is very helpful. Thank you, Eric.
Definitely.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, period one, mid-year report, program start. That's going to vary for all of you. And it goes to the end of February. The mid-year report's due 30 days later, March 30th. Period two, program start to September 30th, reports due October 30th. And then there is a final report if your program operates beyond September 30th, where you include just the data from October until whenever your program. And so it could be 1 to 3 months more of data, depending on, I mean, in this case, if your program's starting at 11/1, which is the latest possible start date, then you would only be reporting on October and November. So 1 or 2 months of extra data. But whereas the mid-year and end-year report are inclusive of your entire program year, that final report is just to capture that extra data that goes beyond the standard reporting periods that we've set up. Thanks for sharing that, Eric. I'll go back to.
No problem.
Okay. Here's what you can expect to report on. There's a section for general information that's just where you'll identify your organization, contract and grant number, the name of the individual submitting the report, contact information, that sort of thing. A section on enrollment and retention rates. You'll also, if you're not fully enrolling members, which like if you don't have 100% enrollment, which is totally understandable, particularly for the mid-year report. Like, you know, it's an expectation that you enroll all members, but you have the opportunity to provide justification as to why you couldn't. Same with retention. If you're not retaining 85% of your members, then you would have to provide an explanation. And circumstances like those experienced this year, you know, that gives you a valid and justifiable reason why you're off of your target percentages for enrollment and retention. Performance measures. This is your outputs and outcomes that we've spent most of the presentation talking about, and what the performance measures that you will find in your application for federal funding. That is what you are reporting on that's specific to your program, whereas the first, actually every other section is going to be the same. Everyone's going to report general information, enrollment retention percentages, successes, challenges, great stories, training and technical assistance requests, demographic information. That's standard. Everyone's going to report on that. The only thing that's unique is your actual performance measures, because they're unique from program to program. And again, if you're not well familiar with your performance measures, please do review your application for federal funding. The other thing I would note, successes, challenges, great stories. What we want to hear about your program's performance isn't only captured by performance measures. So we have additional fields where you can tell us about, we want to hear about successes that maybe aren't directly related to your performance measures, challenges as well, so we can be a resource for you all if possible. Great stories. Often the qualitative storytelling is more compelling than just the numbers that go towards your performance measures, which are important and required, but we also want to hear the stories that you know, help folks connect to the mission, connect your program to the AmeriCorps mission, and we'll use that sometimes in newsletters. Sometimes we'll take those stories and report them to AmeriCorps, and that's a good prompt to let you all know. We ask you for these reports because we have to aggregate all the data, and in an end of year project progress report that's typically due in November. That's another reason for the end of year progress report, why we schedule the deadlines that way, so that we have time to report, aggregate, and then report everything to AmeriCorps. And we want to include not just the quantitative stuff. We also want to share the great things that you all are doing in story form. And this is why we have these fields here. Training and technical assistance. That's for Eric, who's coordinating this training now. When you let us know what your needs are, we can take that into consideration when we design program development training. Eric specifically, when he's designing trainings and such, he can take that into consideration. Demographic information is something that AmeriCorps requires us to aggregate and report across our portfolio. So you'll see at the end of your report fields where you will input demographic information based on the makeup of your cohort. Lastly, just something real practical and hopefully useful for those of you that aren't familiar. To find your enrollment and retention rate in e-grants so that you can then put it into your progress report that's due to the commission. And you'll get these slides. So just navigate to the end of the presentation to follow these instructions, but you're logging it into e-grants, going to portal home, clicking SNN report, state and national reports, selecting enrollment rate report, and make sure your program code is your grant ID on your federal application for funding. You'll be able to find this number, or you should be able to find this number if I'm not mistaken. But it's a good idea to, once you know it, to write it down somewhere so you can quickly pull up any other reports, including this one. And you'll want to select the program year, of course, because you can go back and pull reports from previous program years. And in this case, you'll pull for 2025 when it is due, and then click submit. And then you'll get a nice enrollment rate report here, where it breaks down number of filled slots against number of granted slots to give you an enrollment rate, and you'll enter that into your reporting form. And then you repeat the process, pulling your retention rate report to get that percentage. And to get demographic information, you might have your own system that tracks this as you receive applications or not. But either way, we will need to have that demographic information for our reporting to AmeriCorps. So if you needed to backtrack to pull it member by member, you would go to your portal again, search for submitted applications, and then you can enter the applicant's ID if you have that logged somewhere, or if you have trouble finding that, you can put their first and last name, and then you'll be able to pull up their submitted application, and within that submitted application are different demographic data points that we collect and are required to report to AmeriCorps, including education, date of birth. There's within the demographic tab, you can also pull more data, and that's a way just to, like, if you don't have your system set up, this is where you could start. You could either do it when the report's due, or you could have like an Excel file where you're tracking the different data points that we require in our reporting. And that is all I have for you today, just ahead of 12:30. So we have a few more minutes for questions if there are any. Feel free to come off mute.
I see Christine's comment in the question in the chat, but before I get to Christine's question in the chat, does anyone have any other questions for Anthony? Going once, going twice. Okay.
All right. Thanks, folks.
So Christine asked